What's up, Frost Giants, Asgardians, and people of Midgard? We're the Hills Maniacs, and today we're going to be each selecting what we thought was the best moment from the first Thor movie. So, anyways, like you said, we're going to review what we thought was the best moments from the first Thor movie, and obviously these are going to vary because we judge things differently. We did this a while back. We had some other MCU movies as well, so go check those out as well if you haven't seen those yet. We picked out what we thought was the best moment from, like, you know, the first Captain America, right, etc. We're doing them in chronological order, yes, just because it's more fun that way to rewatch the MCU in the order of which the timeline would be, you know. Yes. Okay, so what did you think was the best all-time moment from the first Thor movie? Because I'm not that huge of a fan of this film to begin with. It's not my least favorite by any means, and I get that it's supposed to be the backstory of Thor, and it was whatever. A Thor-origin story. But I mean, you look at compared to other origin stories that we get in the MCU, like Iron Man, Captain America. Right. I'm not even gonna mention Captain Marvel. All of those were good origin stories, but for me, I mean, it was hard to find like a best moment, so I kind of went with the funniest, or what I thought was the most creative, I guess, part of this movie, and that is the scene close to the end when they are, well, almost right at the end, when Thor and Loki are fighting on the bridge after Loki opens up the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim. Thor and Loki end up fighting, and Loki ends up on the bridge, and Thor ends up setting Mjolnir on his chest, and it just leaves it there, and Loki is struggling to pull Mjolnir off of his chest, and obviously can't. Yeah, that's... yeah. And I think for me, that was just, like, that's the part I remember of Thor. Over anything else from this movie, I think that's the part that stands out. I know there's other stuff that's like, really, that's your best moment. But, you know, for me, that I look at it as what stands out to me and makes me remember this movie. And that scene is part of why I remember Thor. And I like that it's like a running gag throughout the MCU too, that like nobody can lift, you know, the hammer and everything. Like we even see the Hulk can't lift it, everything else. So it does kind of like show what the hammer can actually do, and he does use it. There's other funnier moments in like all the other Thor movies and stuff with Mjolnir as well, at least until Thor Ragnarok. I mean, yeah, I agree that's a funny moment. I don't necessarily see it as, like, the best moment that really, like, you know, defined, like, what defined the movie as a whole, or, so brought anything important to the movie itself. Well, on that note, what would you say is what would you think of as the best moment? So, for me, I'd say the best moment from the first Thor movie is when Loki discovers that he's actually a frost giant. Because I feel like that's where really his character kind of takes off. Like, and really he cements himself as a villain. Because everything he does after that is all to prove that he would be a worthy king of Asgard and everything else. Like, he's told that he's meant to be a king. And I feel like this moment really kind of defined Loki. Because after that, then once he finds that out, that's kind of where he starts acting more villain-like, you know. I mean, I guess you could argue that he kind of did that before, because he helped the Frost Giants get to Asgard, which ruined Thor's coronation as king and everything else. Ended up leading to Thor being banned, or banished from Asgard, and you know, so you could argue that actually happened before that point, but I think this scene, like when he finds it out and then he kind of yells at Odin, I think that's what really started to define Loki as the character that we'll see him become later on in the MCU. You know, where thinks he's meant to be king, and he's just trying to prove himself, really, throughout the rest of the MCU. Like, it was all about proving himself to Thor that he can be better than Thor, proving himself to Odin, and things like that, you know. So after he finds out that he's different, and the real reason why Odin
doesn't want him to be king of Asgard, or has been holding him back, is because, he finds out that he's a frost giant and everything. So that kind of has that tension between him and Odin, and defines Loki as a character going forward. That's why I thought that moment really worked out well. And the way it was, like, Tom Hiddleston's performance there and everything else, like how he's shouting, and you really get that, like, feeling of, like, he feels betrayed because he was lied to his whole life.
See,
and now going forward, he continues to act like that, and it all stemmed from that moment, really.
I understand where you're coming from with that, but I think it would have been more impactful for that scene if they follow up with it later on in the franchise. I mean, never again in any of the Thor movies, any of the other appearances by Loki, not even in the Loki series, do we hear anything about Loki being a frost giant. So really, this had no impact on, other than the fact that it set him up as the villain for this one, to show why he was doing what he was doing. Other than that, it has no point of being mentioned in the MCU that Loki is the son of Laufey, who was the leader of the Frost Giants. But, I mean, I still understand why you're saying, because you're right, it did ultimately, and in the end, he does actually technically still come back and try to, at least for his own agenda, try to rescue Odin from Laufey, to make him the king of Asgard. But
I do see what, I do see what you're saying with, like, it doesn't actually come up again, because it really doesn't. I don't know why they didn't follow up with that. Like, it would have helped probably in the Battle of New York and the Avengers. He could have, like, froze all the Avengers or something, but I guess it all had to do with that casket of ancient winters from Jotunheim. So, but yeah, that's the moment that I thought really, like, and even though it's Thor's movie, that really kind of defined Loki as a character, and that's what kickstarts his whole character arc throughout the rest of the MCU that we see him in, was from that moment there. But let us know what you guys think down in the comments section. What would you say was the best moment from the first Thor movie? If you haven't seen it yet, then go watch the movie and decide for yourself. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more. The next one we talk about in this series, whenever we get to it, will be the first Avengers movie, so stay tuned for that as well. If you're a fan of, like, just the MCU in general. Thank you for watching this video, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Subscribe.